Wow.
Come on in.
Familiar
Oh, hey,
faces.
Jen.
Wow. So that's an avatar I haven't seen in forever. Well, hello, everybody. I actually didn't think anybody would come. That's why I sent the thing too late. All right, let me make sure I got everybody cleared. All right. Well, I'm just gonna get started. It's very casual. This is not supposed to be like a super professional thing. But I just wanted to go over because I know some people have questions about it. I know Victoria's had a lot of use of it, and probably has more questions. But things that have come up, and just wanted to show just the basic idea of what's going on with subtext now. And let me just bring it up. The different modes. This guy in here. And all right. Share screen. Oops. That's one. All right. So, what's the newest stuff? So the newest thing is with the new model release that they did last week, I can do stuff that I had to previously do just for narrative agents. So like things when it would do, multiple steps of different things in the background, but it had to be something that was, um, not something you could watch and you had to wait for it to come back and you get the email and stuff like that. So now, there are two modes here. 1 second, let me actually do this. Go back to here. And everybody knows they could just chat if they have questions and then I'll ask or I'll leave room for questions at the end, but I'll do my best to make sure to check out the chat here. So for those of you who haven't been around in a while, the instruction book has gotten quite insane in the last 4 months. I've spent a lot of time making sure everything is really spelled out in immense detail. So if you haven't had a chance to look at this, and you enjoy reading, you could come read it. If not, it's a great reference. There's actually search here, so you can just search for certain things. You don't have to go around and try and find it. But it's everything that I put into Subtxt and into Muse just laid out and spelled out, and explanations for some of the developments and slight tweaks to original Dramatica theory, but that'll be a different video. So, what I wanted to show today was the focus and flow, which is right over here. Yeah, intelligence. So there's two different modes now. Instead of just having one mode of Muse and you just go and spit everything out. And they align with, kind of your writing process. So flow would be whenever you want to do rapid brainstorming, creative stuff, anything this is a much better writer, I think, than this one. This one is great for dramatic theory, for making sure you have all your story points in the right place, all your story beats in the right place. An undiscovered thing that I didn't realize at the time was that, when you do all your work in Subtxt, and then when it comes time to build out the plotting and put stuff in different places, that's when most people give up. Like they don't even do that section because they're so wiped out from doing all the story points and story beats. And with these new reasoning models, so essentially, the flow is, if you know anything about ChatGPT or whatever, This is 4.0, which is basically what Muse has been for the last 2.5 years. And then this is the more recent reasoning models like O1, and actually this is the O3 one that just came out last Friday. So then I spent all weekend to try and get this ready for everybody. So this one is great and it's been worked on a lot. So if you're not able to save stuff or it's not quite following instructions, this is the one that's better at listening to in terms of like interacting with subtext, like saving away stuff or moving conversations from one story form to another. This one potentially has the same opportunities, but and they're aware of it. It doesn't listen to instructions very well, so they're in the midst of working that out. Once that's there, it's going to be the craziest, most insane thing ever because what happens is I can give it a bunch of really cool things to do, and then when it goes to put stuff together, it can actually talk to subtext on its own and go back and forth, and then get you a really insanely great response as opposed to this one, which is just kind of like off the top of your head, just intuitively, I mean, that's technically how it works. Whereas this one will go off and think through things, right? So and then the thing that I discovered, if you haven't seen it, um, not that I think it's the greatest thing in the world, but that 60-page PDF thing, that was just a test I did on Saturday where I just took the story form from Anora, which is a really great film if you haven't seen it, and I just kind of used it as a um, basic backdrop of the story that I wanted to tell, and then weaves the entire like 28 sequence, actually, the entire 28 sequence screenplay with all the different story beats everywhere, all different what weave together main character, obstacle character, relationship story, and had it pick the very best ones that it thought were the in the appropriate place. So I was quite surprised that it came out so well. So let's see. I think that would have been 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. February 1 probably has a ton of messages. This one. So again, this is available for download if you want to check it out. But just to go over it briefly, you can see there's a ton of stuff here. Oh, let me get the chat. Let me make sure everybody's here. Also, I've not done a live thing here in a while. So I knew what the story, I remember the story form from Anora. So I just threw in a whole bunch of stuff from the actual story form and said, hey, let's go ahead and start building a story together. So that's one way that you could possibly do it. A lot of questions I get are, what is the best way to go through it? And it really is up to your knowledge point. Like there's some people in here who really know Dramatica really well, Dramatica theory. I would just put in as much as you possibly can and don't feel like it'll get overwhelmed because this one, the focus one, the more you put into it, the better it comes back, the more detail you can give in. Whereas this one might get a little overwhelmed and tend to hallucinate certain aspects of the story form and kind of is not as accurate as the other one is. So I was, you know, really quite impressed. So, sorry, I'm just trying to make sure I get all this across. So these are you'll see the two icons here. This one is for flow, so it's kind of like a river flowing. And then the focus one is this more squared off one. So if you go back and you can't remember which one is which, that way that's your indicator of which one is the flow one and then which one would be the focus one. But eventually I got to a place where I had set up like 7 moments that I knew I wanted in the story that I was coming up with, which was almost like the cooler. I think I just ripped off the idea of the cooler and then put it in the story form for Anora. But I just came up with a bunch of different moments and then I asked it to just put, look in your matrix for the objective story transits of Anora and rewrite the objective story with them. And so then it went and grabbed the objective story transits from the story form that Subtext has for Nora, and then rewrote the story that I had with these new transits in there. And so you can see it's there's a lot more here that it can work on and do in such a way that you can do a lot at once. But you'll notice like here, it didn't quite have the right ones, so I actually had to go back to flow. This is the only annoying part until they get it fixed. You know, I had to use flow to check out the examples to do that stuff. So just off the bat, does anybody have any questions that they just keep
Can
going?
you repeat again when you said that Flow has all the fine tuning that you did from the last 2.5 years? Is that what I heard you say, right? And that's what you need to use in order to get it to go into to fill the fields of develop still,
Yeah,
but you want us to use focus to stay within the narrative framework and really develop it out. But when we want to transfer it, if we save it, we should flip to flow and then say, hey, can you save it?
yeah, yeah.
All right.
I know it's super annoying, and sometimes it'll do it. Like, for instance, if I say, you know, what are some stories where the MC problem is chaos? If I do this in flow, it'll definitely give me the right answer. If I do it in focus, um, this is your indication that it is going off and doing it. The other thing is if you've used ChatGPT or some of them and they have the reasoning where you get kind of like the back and forth of like, okay, this I'm thinking about it, now I'm doing this, and now I'm doing that. That's also not available to me yet. So there's this blank space, which I will likely fill in with some random stuff until they give me that access to it. So it looks like it's broken right now, but it's actually doing stuff. It's like thinking through stuff. And you'll know when it actually breaks because it'll signal it. But if it's just sitting here, this is what takes a little bit longer. So that's the other thing is with flow, this answer would be a lot faster. You know, so you would only use focus when you have a ton of story points and a ton of story beats, and you want to weave them all together and do all the plotting, mixing, and matching without having to go through the current subtext where you have to drag and drop everything, and it kind of gets it's a little too much in your head. See, now it's just now saying, oh, okay, now I'll go look and look at the story forms that are in subtext to be able to come back with the right answer.
So can
Oh,
I ask another question? So then when in Muse, there is still mode, Muse, or theory. So um, when are we using that, and when are we using the other?
right. That's a super good question. So, Michael's asking about this mode thing here where you have Muse or theory. Um, the theory would only be if you want to learn about Dramatica theory. Like if you want to go through the 15 years of narrative first, all the articles that I've written, every post that's ever been on discuss.dramatica, every transcript of every user group meeting, like the whole 30 years lore is in here and specifically just goes there as opposed to stuff that it's been trained on in the real world, you know, like the stuff that they did off the internet. The thing you have to be really careful is a lot of people do that and then they forget that they have it on and then they get mad at me because they think it's broken because you can't do anything else with it currently because you can't upload files, you can't interact, you can't save stuff. You always have to go back to this just because of the way everything's built, how they have it set up. I have to keep them separate. So this is like, I just want to learn everything that's there and I really want to get into a specific concept of Dramatica theory. So is theory more of a tutor than a writing partner? Yeah, I mean that you would learn all this stuff from Dramatica theory and all the stuff that I've learned, like practically applying it. I mean, you can then switch back in the same conversation and then use that information as kind of context for developing your own stuff. So if it comes up with a particularly great understanding of the theory and you're like, oh, that's really cool. I want to use that. Can you use that, but kind of tweak it for my character? then you can use that as a context. And just have to be really conscious of the fact that it's in this theory mode. And I even switch it up here and do the icon and stuff like that, but that's a common thing that I hope technically gets resolved in like a couple months when stuff gets put in there. But yeah,
But
I would
in the same conversation, you can toggle back and forth to the different modes and have the same flow conversation, and it'll be okay.
yeah, so now it's theory, so then I can ask about what is the main character problem? How does that flow and or how does that apply? And it'll go and look through everything that's ever been discussed about main character problem, take the biggest, most important pieces, most relevant stuff, and then come back with an answer that feeds into what you have going on here. But you'll
Be able
see.
to just
Oh,
take
go
us
for it.
through like a really quick workflow if I'm starting something totally new.
That I could do. I just want to show you real quick so that you saw how long it took to do the chaos one. So I put it back on flow here, and if I just say, what are orders transits from, let's do Top Gun. Everybody loves Top Gun. This should be a lot quicker than that focus one to give you an idea for it. And I see it's already like here. The other one took almost like a minute and a half to get to this. So here it's going through, it's got the 4 transits and then talks about what he's going through personally. Masterpiece of storytelling, Top Gun. the original one.
I got some more questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so do we need? I didn't really build out my my individual personas very much, but I remember you had. Is there any reason to do that now, or can we basically just you've already pre-thought this all out, right? So there's nothing really we can customize any more than what you're doing, correct?
No, there's quite a bit. If you wanted to do flow and then either you wanted somebody, so you could do the theory thing, right? And you could have them, discuss what it is. Or you could switch to a persona that is like, oh, teach it to me like I'm 10 years old, or I'm in junior high, or what's the junior high version of the main character problem, or transits, or some of the more complex stuff that's in subtext. And then that way you could customize what's there without you having to front load it all the time. Right. So that's what personas are for. They're like custom instructions. I mean, they are from like something like ChatGPT. So you would set that up. The thing that I would use it the most for is once you get, like, if I had that outline from the Las Vegas thing that I did over the weekend, and then I could take each moment, right? There's 28 moments, which are like the average 28 moments for a screenplay. And I would have a screenplay persona that just says write in Fountain and here are the rules. I only want at most 3 sentences for action slug. Don't use parentheticals, like all those rules, like your version of writing in Fountain. And then use that to do the writing part of it, like your first draft, like a really gross kind of like first
Okay,
dump out of it. That's what I would use it for.
I got you.
And then also, if you have your own version of the theory and you've decided I don't want to use subtext, I want to do a little bit of a modification, you could put in your version of some of the terminology if you like that better, and it will do its best to
Okay.
keep that in play.
Could you make more of a specific storytelling persona,
Yeah, that would be, and that's what I was talking
like
about
if I
with.
wanted like Aaron Sorkin to be the whatever?
Well, yeah, I mean, you could, like, I have Frederick, the screenwriter, and all I have in here is please respond in screenplay format. Here is, the rules, my own personal take on it, because it knows Fountain, like you can actually write in that.
Oh, okay.
but these are like my versions of it. And then the storytelling thing you're asking about is, yeah, turn this on, because then what that will do is it skips over all the theory, all the smart parts of Muse, as far as like dramatic theory and how story works and all that stuff. It'll ignore that. So then it's just like strict story. This is pretty much putting it like in a chat GPT mode, but without a lot of their alignment stuff that they have in there. So it's a little more free to storytell. So you could use it for that if you wanted to.
But if you already have your story form kind of broken out and laid out, and then you put this on top of it, will it still adhere to what you have, or?
Yeah, yeah. Like if I
Okay.
wanted to, oh, like here. So we just did that thing with Top Gun, right? So if I pull up the Top Gun conversation, and I'll still do the build out the story from scratch sort of thing, so you can see what that's like. Um,
Thank
yeah,
you.
because there are lots of different ways to go about doing it. So that's why I'm gonna do more of these. I'm gonna do them like at least once a week, so people can just drop in and like, hey, what's the kind of thing that you're doing now? So, all right, so if I took the Top Gun stuff here, and then I switched to, oh, of course, I have to find one, I think. There. Yeah, so everybody can do a core one. You have to be on like Pro or Infinite to do all the extra ones. But now that I have that, go back here,
Oh, my.
go here. And come on. I have a lot of conversations. Okay, here we go. This one. All right, so then now if I switch to Frederick, actually he's already picked. Yeah, and that should be, and this is the indicator that it's a storytelling one, whereas this might be more theory based. These are all storytelling. So, um, it should do it in found format. Yeah, cool. So it even has this, which I should do a better job of catching, but oh, it's been a while since I've done this. I guess I did do that. So once it's all in there, now you have the whole, you know, you flew reckless out there, Maverick. I call it progress. That's horrible. That's not even right about the transit. You know, hopefully you have something better than just this action here. But as far as a demo for the persona thing, that's what this is for. And conceivably you could put in some examples of your own writing, and that would help uh, train it in a certain way, right?
Yeah, Iceman's dialogue is pretty faithful to the.
Which one is Iceman's?
Yeah.
No, we're not going to win Top Gun by playing it safe, are we? Pushing limits is one thing. All right, cheesy. But I don't think he thinks of it as progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the real world, he's moving from being a just regular pilot into the world of Top Gun, and that's what that should be as the setup for it. Not that would be the one thing where it's like using the terminology as if characters were speaking it. That's like the absolute worst thing in the world. Characters don't know about the story structure and they don't talk about it. Okay, so then that's personas, which I didn't know I was going to talk about, but yeah, so then that's how you would do that. And then to turn it off, you can just do that. Oh, that's so funny. I've done so much, sometimes I forget that I've made allowances so I could do it all from in here. Okay. So, all right, so let's just make up a story here. What are your ideas, Johnny? This is your idea. So throw.
On the spot. Okay, a father loses his daughter in a car accident, and then kind of like the Spielberg movie Minority Report, you can replay the memories over and over. And he notices a discrepancy in the memory that makes him wonder if it was an accident or not.
So the first thing I would do, I would just have it in flow and I would just throw in like just like you said. And even if on your device, if you have an easy way to just like talk into it, speak into it, I find the more stream of consciousness, you're not like hampered the resistance of typing it, you get even better responses out of it. So, fascinating concept. Define. So what it'll do automatically is it'll start helping you try and figure out the story form for it to have the basis of the structure. So then you have all these like kind of ideas that you can go off of. So the first thing it would do is to define the objective story and the main character. That's like the first thing it tries to do, because obviously, the other ones will fall in line. So those are kind of like the two big ones to figure out. And because of the idea that physics, it would try and make stories about people who are PhD in physics. These have changed to environmental framing is what universe used to be. Physical processing is physics. Cognitive processing is psychology, and then attitudinal framing is the old mind. So those two are framing, and then these two are processing. I found once I did that, it gets it. It gets all the stuff that's in there. So in this one, it just suggested two different places for the objective story. Cognitive processing, the father's journey revolves around unraveling the nature of his memories and whether they're real or fabricated. Or attitudinal framing, the father's perception of reality and trust in his memory could be challenged by this discrepancy. So that is, coming in. So then those are the two options of like, all right, based on what you just told me here, this is what I'm thinking.
So two of them is more than three
Isn't that crazy?
on Wednesday. So
And then the main character through line, the protagonist, the father, now these are the two options that it could kind of get out of that. One was environmental framing. It's in a world, without his daughter, like he's missing, that would be like his personal thing. Or he's like obsessive about it and keeps replaying it, keeps thinking it over and over and over again. So those would be two options that it identified, and it's going to keep going because then the next one would be the goal. So it's picked like the three highest probability of what the goal is. Understanding could possibly be it, untilling could be it, being could be it. Those of you who've been around the block are already thinking like, well, these don't all really go together. And that's the flow thing. So flow is just like, it's always going to tell you you're telling a great story. It's always going to tell you that's really cool. Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing a great job. Let's keep going. It's always going to try and make the best it can out of this, even if it doesn't fit in with the framework. Because really, there is no right answer to this. You can make any of these work. It's just helping you like kind of form the structure a little bit more out of this chaotic idea. I personally would have said, oh, this is a objective story, physical processing, main character, environment, and then, main character universe, objective story, physics, like a typical sci-fi Minority Report. Although I think actually in Minority Report, he's down here in attitudinal framing. But that's why it's got all these different, thoughts to it, different ideas to it. Does that make sense? Trying and see like it's throwing out trust versus test, which is like, whoa, that's a huge leap. I haven't even nailed down the different things. So for you, Johnny, because I know you know theory quite well, what would be your just the domains of the objective story and the main character? What would you pick? Here, I mean, and you can do, and you can tell me the old terminology. I'll translate, but
Yeah, I definitely think he would be obsessive, as his personal kind of issue. So I like that throughout, that's psychology. Um,
but the objective story.
I like either. I mean, I like framing it either kind of framing, either external or internal.
And so I'm gonna try Johnny's saying external and internal framing, and it should get that the external framing is environmental and the internal is the attitudinal. So just know that it's like in that same area. See, it did it automatically. So you can spell wrong as long as you have like your general, you're going in the right direction. It does an amazing job of like trying to keep it back, pulling it back in, or it can interpret what it is you're trying to get across. So then what it's going to do is it's going to give you two different looks at what an objective story environmental framing would look like versus a plot that is more attitudinal. So this one, it would be more about the oppressive society, right? Like kind of more the sociological things, the environment. I mean, literally, as if they're the ones that are in charge and all that kind of stuff. And you want to really explore that feeling of upper class versus lower class. That would be like an environmental framing. Attitudinal framing would be one where, I mean, this one's really weird. So not only his obsession, but maybe like you want to explore everybody having an obsession or everybody dealing with fear, anger, loss, more grounded in a personal experience that typically when you have an objective story here, this works really good for plays. A lot of Shakespeare stuff is here. Um, Hamilton is here, that kind of stuff. So, but not to say that you couldn't do it. It would just feel like a very different sci-fi film, one that you haven't probably seen before. Whereas this one is more environmental, or is more like typical what you would expect. So yeah, what's the story's feel that you want? Do you want more of a conspiracy action thriller? Do environmental framing? Yeah. And if you want introspective psychological vibe, go attitudinal. What do you want?
Environmental universe.
So please. All right. So now that it has that, all right, the memory replay technology, yeah, like corporate, what is it? Surveillance, that kind of stuff. All right, this will be the fun part. So the story goal could be uncovering the truth, obtaining justice, or rescuing his daughter. Or do you have a fourth one that you would want?
Hmm.
I'm very well aware that this does not align, but I'm going to show you what's good about
Okay.
that. Just try and be creative. Don't think theory for a second.
Number one.
Number one. Okay. So go with goal. Let's go with number one. So uncovering the truth and dovetails beautifully. So now let's finalize the thematic pair to deepen the conflict. Let's say you know nothing about theory, right? Let's just say you're like, all right, this is the first time I've ever opened up Muse. All right, trust versus test. All right, that's kind of cool. Or control versus abandon, which would be free or uncontrolled from what you're known in the past. For right now, just pick one of these pairs as like the core argument between the father, and I don't even know if we've identified the obstacle character, but kind of the core argument of your story. What is his problem that he has to like get over if you were to pick one?
Yeah, like test.
Test? Okay.
Yeah. But trust test.
This would be, let's say, pivotal. Thematic. Let's just do, I'm thinking test versus trust.
Yeah.
Again, just trying to take all the ideas that you have and keep it going, keep the flow going as long as it possibly can. So now you're going to see some fun things. So the objective story is environmental framing, main characters and cognitive. So that aligns. Story goals uncover the truth, and thematic conflict is test versus trust. And now let's look at his main character through line. Does he need to let go of his obsessive testing and learn to trust again, or does he need to abandon blind trust entirely and fully commit to his investigation no matter the cost? This is a great question, because assuming he is a character that transforms and drops away their old way of doing things, do you want him to go from always testing everything because he isn't he's always challenging the status quo, and then now he just has to kind of like learn to trust, or he just implicitly trusts everybody because he's, feels that loss, and now he has to kind of second guess people, or challenge them, kind of come up to the challenge to face other people and test them.
I think he has to relent his obsessiveness.
Rid of the testing, becoming more trusting. Okay. So again, because there is the change method that is part of the framework that has been altered to relinquish. So you're relinquishing the old way of doing things. It's very specific. All right, so the father's journey will focus on moving from obsessive testing to trust. And this stuff is more, so this is where it's like more storytelling, right? And it's just going to go through and kind of give you a couple different ideas. It'll be different every time that you go through it. But let's say, all right, now, all right, this is enough. You can even say like, that's enough. Do we have enough for a story form? But the main goal being to get to a story form. Now, and this is where it comes into play, is like, what's the best approach? This might be enough. Like just going through what we just did the last 10 minutes might be enough. And you're like, cool, I'm super excited. I'm just going to go off and start writing some stuff. You don't have to get to a story form. Muse, there's two workspaces now. There's like the Muse workspace where it's free flowing, do whatever you want. And then develop is after you already have a story form and you really want to go through and fill in all the boxes and make sure you have all the different pieces that are in there. So you'll see, this is great. So it actually engaged focus mode on its own.
Huh.
So that's great. So the difference between like Pro and the other stuff is that you can manually change it, which really helps when it comes to weaving and stuff like that. But that's not to say that you can't engage it to check the story form, because that's the only way it's going to be able to figure out the story form. Because these are all kind of like all over the place. And this should have it has a complete story form. Let's make sure. That was quite a leap. So just based on all the choices that you made, it kept the objective story and environmental framing, figured out that the concern would be progress, which is aligned with test versus trust. That works out great. The external forces revolve around achieving progress, whether that's uncovering the truth or unraveling the flaws in the system. So even though I would have said uncovering the truth would be like understanding, or understanding what's really going on. It just seems to me like I've seen that a million times, and that would be the perfect fit. You could conceivably make this like the evolution of the state of the world affairs, the surveillance state, progressing beyond the surveillance state, right? Or
Yeah.
breaking that system down. You definitely could. And then also figured out the main character's personal thing. If there's somebody who is completely obsessive and always testing, the concern, the focal point would be, can you just be, instead of always like testing stuff, always like checking in, making sure what is that specifically you would get into more. It already assumed that you got the success, already assumed it was good, already got the relinquished. There should be some more parts. So like I'll do this. So I'll go, all right, how about instead we finalize the story form. So another thing that I've done, which some might not be familiar with, is the context here down at the bottom. Right now, we're just in the context of a conversation. So there's no story form, there's no story, nothing in there. And you can see that either down here at the bottom, because there'll be 3 different things right now. There's just one, or up here at the top, we're not even in a context, so it's just the conversation. So watch, if I say, how about instead we finalize the story form and save it in a story called John's Folly. Sorry. Just call it that. So what it should do is check the story form and realize, whoa, I haven't quite figured stuff out, or it's just gonna leap ahead and fill in like the driver and that kind of stuff. But let's see what it does. Oh, it's already saved.
Hmm.
Well, let's see what it did. All right, so you'll notice here it created the story. So that's, you can think of it like a folder, like where all your different story forms are.
Yeah.
And then it has the story form, which we'll check in a second. And then that conversation has been put into the story form context.
Oh.
So I can always come back to this conversation, and these are all clickable. So I can go here and let's see what it did.
Hmm.
All right, it made a couple leaps. So it obviously automatically made it serotonin, which is my latest change from male female mental sex.
Hmm.
As we
Okay.
move into wider audiences and wider acceptance of everything. And it's more in line with like the original theoretical concept, with dopamine being more reward-based, goal-based, male mental sex linear, and then serotonin being relational, balancing inequities and
Someone
that.
else is gonna have to write this one.
So relinquish. Now let's see. All right, see it did the opposite of it. Like it jumped ahead and it really shouldn't have. And that possibly could have been because we were in the flow mode, but it already went ahead and put all of this stuff in here and created the story form that I can always come back to. And if I go to the conversations, you'll see this is the conversation that we just had, so we can always refer back to it. So let's say I come back to this conversation and I go, wait a second. You went ahead and made it a serotonin narrative. I'm assuming you wanted like linear male mental sex, right?
If I were gonna write it, yeah.
Yeah. So plus, you flipped the MC and OC elements. I really wanted the bad to go from test to trust. Now we could try this in flow and see if like, all right, is it going to do the same thing? Is it going to redo it? And it possibly could fix itself, but I just want to try focus and see, and I'll leave that spelled wrong. And have it go back and look over it and really think a little harder. Go back to your desk and really sit down and think, think things through. And it should be a better version of it. So just while we're waiting for it, so when it comes to the context stuff, now that there is a story form and we're in this context, it knows the whole story form. So now you can just start talking about different aspects of it. Hey, let's work on the obstacle character through line. Hey, let's work on the relationship story. It already knows everything. You don't need to tell it, well, the problem is this. Oh, the concern is this. It knows everything that's in there and will help keep you on track with that context in there. And then if you were just in a story context, you can still save stuff, right? You can still go through and save different aspects, even though I have an idea for the main character problem, but I'm not sure what element it is yet. I don't know if it's test result, but I want to save the storytelling. You can do all that and then eventually get to a story form. That would be the purpose of having the story context. So you can see it's checking and double checking, and if it doesn't time out. The other thing with the story and the story form context are when you upload documents, the ones that you upload to the story would be more for everybody, and then the story form is just in that context of the story form. So you could upload all your world building stuff and it would be able to apply to it. The story to story form thing, I'm hoping is in the next couple weeks or so, but that's the idea behind it. Come on.
Jim, can you repeat that? Because I've just started to play with uploading a document, and I wasn't exactly sure whether or not it was drawing from it. It seemed like it was, but I wasn't convinced that it was. And so, and I did it from the premise builder where I knew what I wanted the story form to be because I worked at it previously. And then I generated the new story form, and then I uploaded the document. And then I wasn't exactly sure where I was supposed to go to start. Because what I did was I wrote the first draft not using subtext. I wanted to just anyway. So now I want to refine it and get my story correct because my B story was bunk and I couldn't figure it out. And so I want to now rewrite using subtext. And I wasn't exactly sure at what point do I put the document in and where do I what workplace is the best to do it. So anyway, and then yeah, okay, that's it.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, this might be timing out, but and do you have the story form? You feel really good about it, like the story form that you have?
Yeah, I yes. Yeah, no, and I've confirmed. I wrote the first draft having gone through it using subtext, but you know how, like you said, sometimes you just want to like get the basic of the story and then let your creative stuff go. So I did that, knowing what the story form was. But now, now that I have my creative stuff thrown up, I want to now carve it into a complete story using subtext. So I want to go back and now do the nitty gritty of filling in all my things and laying in the story and being like, well, you know, this scene doesn't exactly do what it should do, and how do I, you know, get it to be a more complete story. So anyway, so that's where I'm at, and that's why I'm here, because you have the new workplaces, and I'm a little confused as to when you should use which when you already know your story form.
Okay. Yeah, on the surface of it, it would be which one you're most comfortable with. I personally would probably use the develop one, and I'll show you why. And you're right to question. I don't think you actually read it. and I'll show you. I have something in there to make sure that it upgrades it. But let's see. It says that it updated it. I don't quite trust that. Oh, let's see. This will be the second one. Yay! It worked. So right now they're named the same. So the first thing I would do is the right one. So I just make sure I change that so I know which is the right story form. And then now that I'm in that context, I can go ahead and start working out all the different details of it and be able to be able to build off the story off of that. So that actually worked quite well. So to answer Michael's question, because I was going to try and keep these to about an hour, but I think the document uploading one is a good one because that comes up quite often. I think a good test would be if you just give me a second to find where I have marriage story in here. I believe. PDF is right. Or does anybody have a screenplay they can throw me real quick? Why wouldn't it be in there? Let's try. Documents. I was trying to get a screenplay for an example. Screenplays. Oh, scripts. That's what it's. Yeah, sure. Okay. All right. So I don't know if you've seen it, but it's all right. It's not too bad. It's a film called Marriage Story. Baumbach, right? Was it Noah Baumbach? Was the screenwriter for it? Actually, Michael, I think I can hear like the banging of all the pots and stuff. I'm just gonna mute you for a second while I just do it. So and with Adam Driver, right? So and Scarlett Johansson, and they get a divorce, and it's that kind of story. So what I did is I just uploaded the entire screenplay here. So this is kind of like what Michael was asking. Is like, all right, well, I know my story form, and I've got it all figured out. I feel really good about it. I'm 100% confident. Now I've written the draft, and now I want to come back in and see like, oh, how did I do? How are things going with that? So in the develop workspace, I would come into documents and I just uploaded the PDF straight there. And then let's say, for instance, you get feedback that the main character is not, I just can't relate to him. I don't feel like there's enough going on with him or whatever. So I would say, let's look at maybe the domain and the problem and see if there's enough instance of it in the screenplay. You can just open this up, and I would keep this in flow just mainly because for some godforsaken reason, they won't let me upload documents to Focus, which is like, what? Only because customer support, everybody doesn't understand. So it's just a technical thing, which apparently will get fixed in very soon. Once that's fixed, then you'll be able to upload in either sort of area. But for right now, it's just the flow one. So I would say, can you look at the marriage story? Script I uploaded. And let me know what you think about the main character, the main problem. I keep getting the note that, there isn't a lot to him. Am I hitting all the right notes? Presumably, it will actually read the whole screenplay and find examples of his attitudinal framing. He's kind of like stuck on himself and has this like attitude that he's the most important part of the family. And then also consider is his problem. And I believe that's him being inconsiderate, or he like can't make a choice one way or the other. So it's going through, and like I said, it has the context of the story form, right? So it knows everything that's here on the left. So it knows that the main character, I didn't even have to call it out, right? Yeah. And so it went through and saw that, and I'm not reading it yet on purpose. And then here's the problem, suggestions to improve it. Okay, so here you'll see it doesn't say reference narrative matrix or referenced uploaded document, which means it didn't do what it was supposed to. So I would say, can you stop being lazy and actually use the uploaded file? Here, story, read, site, specific. Oh, it's not site, it's specific. I'm not buying it. Oh, why is it in? Oh, a second. Yeah, this might be in the wrong matrix. Okay, see how it did this? That's your sign that it actually did it. So what happened is, obviously there's a bug. When I switched to the develop workspace, it was, even though it said flow, it was still actually in focus mode. So it wasn't actually being able to access the file. So I will fix that after today's meeting. That's more of a implementation thing, but I agree. Sometimes it gets really lazy and it doesn't do it. It's gotten way better in the last couple months as far as reading. But if you don't see this reference narrative matrix or reference uploaded document, then that's a really good sign that it's not actually going through and reading it, right? So then you would use that to be able to go through and check all the different all your story points and go through and check and make sure like, hey, are you actually, did I hit this part? I would make a really strong suggestion is the way it currently works now is when it takes your screenplay and it puts it in there, it just goes through blindly and just takes chunks of it one after the other. I could get really intelligent about that and just try and divide it up by acts. If you already know your act breakdown, like, oh, I know where my act breaks are, just divide it into the 4 ones and just do, you can upload, each act, just because then, like if you have a scene that takes place in a diner, it takes place in the first act, maybe towards the end of the second act and also the third act, and you say, hey, I want to work on my main character scene in the diner. It's going to grab all of them and won't really have the context of the act. So if you can divide it up, because this framework, the narrative model that we're using, already divides it up into fours like that, if you could do that ahead of time for right now, that you'll probably get better results. Because I know people that do that, they'll do one act, upload it, check it against all these different things. Oh, how can I improve it? Can I hit this part? Can I make this part better? Instead of doing the whole chunk at once, right? It just isn't an easier way to go through, and especially if you've already got the story form and you've already analyzed it.
And is it beneficial to do it on a particular page? Like if you're asking about the main character, should we go under illustrating main character and then go through Muse, uh, or does it make a difference? It doesn't.
Not at all. No.
Okay.
Muse has this entire story form in here. It knows all the in between this response, or I'm sorry, this question and what you're back. It has your story form, all the different things that you've put in. If you have any through line descriptions, it's got that in there. You know, it knows a lot of the context, so it can grab something out of it. But you don't necessarily need to be in here in order to drop in here and be able to fill in that stuff.
But if we wanted to save something in there, we could check to see whether it's saved. Right.
You can't save directly from Muse into here the way that you can in the Muse workspace. It's not reactive like that.
Oh,
That's why I have the copy paste here. You have to do old fashioned copy paste into there when you're in develop. The saving 2-year story form is only available right now in the Muse workspace.
is there any benefit to having two tabs open, the develop tab open and the Muse open, and then
Only because it's not reactive. So if you did something in Muse and you saved it and you have this other one open and you refresh the page, then and reload the entire story, yes. But it's not what you're used to, which is like, oh, I can do it on my phone and then it just pops up on my computer. I haven't integrated that because I have to rewrite the front end and anyways this year, so that is going to be part of it. It doesn't make sense to make it work in here.
but when you
realized
refresh the page, it should.
anytime you lose something or you think something's not working, just do Command R or Control R, and that reloads everything, and you know you're getting the latest of what everything is. It's like unplugging and plugging back in your oven or whatever, your refrigerator. It's the same thing. And yeah, I know Victoria has here in the chat. I have a feeling in my enthusiasm to get focus and flow out earlier, I might have flipped a switch that is making it more difficult to reference uploaded documents, and I'll check that again this afternoon just to make sure. So that would be it for, I mean, that's pretty good. It's an hour 10. And I'm going to try and do this at least once a week, if not twice, around the same time, probably Mondays and Wednesdays, just to go over all the new features. I know people probably ask me, what's a perspective and all that stuff. There's a lot that has been done to subtext in the last 4 months, and a lot more industry interest that should come to light in the next couple months. So I want to like start getting it clear to everybody what's going on and why all these changes are here and how to use everything, so that all the advances and stuff, you know, come springtime will be really cool and really exciting. So, and focus and flow is like the first step on that. And then as always, if anybody has any kind of questions, you can always hit me up like Discord or email and that kind of stuff, because this is literally all I do now all the time. And Shash shows up right as I'm about to fail. Rook, when we break a script into acts for subtext to analyze, it would be best to use 4 acts. Yes, because that's the dramatic structure. Absolutely. Yeah, I would break break your screenplay up into the 4 chunks. Even if you don't know, you know, if it's 100 pages, just do every 25 pages. It'll be close enough, and then you can run through the narrative structure and be able to check everything and make sure, see what things are missing and what aren't. What's there, what's not there, what you could improve. And maybe next time I'll do, because I know a lot of people are really into the uploading thing. Next time maybe I'll go over like an approach to doing that, how I found it to be beneficial. Sound good? Cool. Well, it's awesome seeing everybody. I really thought
Yeah.
nobody would show up. Jill, I can't believe Jill's here. That's
I'm
insane.
back in the pocket. Are you guys still meeting to do the breakdowns with Dramatica monthly?
Yeah. We're doing next Tuesday night is the Penguin episode where Sophia goes to Arkham.
Okay, I'm gonna start joining. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm glad Chris picked it because it's cool. Where can I find a glossary so I can migrate from earlier Dramatica terms? That is a fantastic question. So like I said in the guide, I have a billion new pages here. Well, you can do a couple things. You can go to Dramatica and you'll see Dramatica theory and subtext. And I have a whole page dedicated to all the differences and explanation as to why. And everything that's in there so that you can come over to that. So that would be one place. And of course, the other thing you could always do is you could come in here and you could say, what the heck is environmental naming? I thought this was Dramatica. And it should help to explain why. It'll help to give you an explanation, and even using the main reason is because throughout the development of Dramatica theory, there have been various different versions of it, and that confuses when it comes time to getting an accurate analysis like what subtext does. So I have well, there'll be something, a standard coming out that will be this standard that everything else will feed into. So in a way for it to get away from the training that the models have been done just in their own development. So like, oh, I know Dramatica, it's this, this, and this. And then you're like, what are you talking about? That's not even close to what the right thing in Dramatica is. That's why I'm splitting that away into its own thing. And also I go through and fine tune a lot of stuff when I see that it's not working according to the theory. And that the part of that's why you see environmental framing here instead of universe, instead of situation. It just gets exactly right, straight to the point to what it's supposed to be.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, so hopefully that, and yeah, you can use that, and you can be as rude as you want to this. You can do whatever you want to then. And then yeah, and if one other thing is if you ever get lost and you want to know like what's next, this one is a super cool one that I wish I had like 30 years ago. But then it'll look at what your conversation is going on and predict like what would be the next thing that you should work on, you know, based on whatever it is that you're talking about at the time. So make sure you check that out. Other than that, I hope to see everybody more often. Yeah, and if you want to come do the Penguin next week, it'll be 7 p.m. Pacific. It'll be in the Discord. The link will be, and of course, it's recorded as always. Wow, she's real. Hi, Jill. Then I will see everybody soon. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.